One. What's good, everybody? This is Genuine Talks. I'm Drew,
I'm River.
and today's topic is a very one that hits hard. It's a recent event that we've seen over social media. We're going to be talking racism today. And there's nobody better to have on the podcast than these two. Please, ladies, introduce yourselves.
Carliene, start off.
All right, no problem. Hi, I'm Carliene, and I am one of the co-leaders of GCBI's Black Student Union.
That's all? My name's Audny Stewart. I am the co-director and leader / creator with Carliene Christian of the GCBI Black Student Union.
Amazing. If you guys don't know, for all the Western listeners and everybody everywhere, GCVI is a school that me and River went to. That these two are just leaving now. I guess let's start off with that. Where are you guys going next year? What's your plans? I want to know your forward plans before we get into the whole topic.
We're exposing ourselves like that.
Wow,
what's your moves? What's your moves out of the city? Let them know.
Ooh, Audney, you want to go? Go, sis.
Whatever. So I'll be going to University of Toronto, Mississauga campus for, first year is going to be pretty general for humanities. Most likely, maybe I'll go into Law Society. Oh, so sorry. Law Society or something like that. I don't know yet.
Sick.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to McMaster's, and I'm also doing humanities. But second year, I plan to apply to the JPPL, which is the Justice Political Philosophy program, and Law program, which is the L. So that's my plans. Definitely heading towards law school and trying to practice some type of law.
Amazing. Super cool. So the reason I wanted to say that is just so everyone gets a baseline. The conversation today is definitely on some heightened topics, and I just wanted to make sure we were in a scenario where we understand that Genuine Talks is a fun platform. We're going to have a genuine conversation, but we wanted you to know that we're talking to some educated people and making sure that we have this conversation in an intelligent fashion. So with that, I'd like to start with just what was your initial reaction and your feeling when you heard about George Floyd and the events surrounding it? What was that initial visceral idea there? Go first.
Okay, I'll start. So first I saw the pictures and I refused to watch the actual video, but since then I actually have seen the video because it's constantly playing on the news on repeat. My initial reaction, I was just, honestly, I'm exhausted. It's really tiring hopping on the TL. And every other day somebody's dead. Already we're losing a lot of people to corona, and on top of it somehow police brutality is going up somehow during a lockdown, and it makes me really nervous because like I have younger brothers. I know so many Black people who could easily be in the same position. It's just, it's really uncomfortable. And the part that makes it even more hurtful is the fact that people are somehow trying to justify it. His murder, that he has only been charged for a third degree as if it was an accident, because they're trying to say crazy. That he died from a pre-existing condition because he had something wrong with his heart or whatever, but his medical distress was caused because the officer had his knee on his rope, blocking his airways for 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes.
Yeah.
Clearly, yeah.
I don't have any more words. Like, there's nothing left to say. Like, what else can you say? Like,
no, I get that. Of course. Audney?
Again with Carliene, I'm tired because like for the last almost 2 months, probably like in the last 2 weeks especially, it's been pretty hard for the Black community as we saw Ahmaud Arbery get lynched, and the videos surrounding that, and then we had to see Amy Cooper try to criminalize a Black man's skin, so that's also very triggering. And then a couple days later we had to see the video of George Floyd being killed. And like, this is a very hard topic for me. I'm very emotional to the subject because since Trayvon Martin was killed, basically lynched in 2012, ever since that year, as I could be aware of it, almost for the last 10 years, I've just seen Black men and women die on video. And it's been this thing in the media where, oh, we talk about it for 2 weeks and then we don't talk about it anymore. So this sits near to my heart because it's something that I've been a big advocate on all throughout my elementary school years and in high school, and something that people didn't like that I talked about.
Totally.
That is why Carliene and I created the Black Student Union, so that we could have a place and a safe space where we can discuss these issues.
Yeah, thank you for that. River, now let's get a little outside. River, what was your reaction? And I'll do mine after, but what are you saying?
Honestly, like, I watched the video for the first time, right? And okay, it's weird to say, but it felt sort of like normal, like I've seen this happen so many times that I just didn't react as much. But then the man was begging for his life, right? He he lived in America to live a good life, and he has a family, and he, like, breathing is a human right, and that was taken away from him by the people who are supposed to protect us. And I'm just like, I was uncomfortable. Like, I've seen some fucked up shit on the internet, right? Like, some really fucked up shit, but I was uncomfortable watching this. I don't even know. Like, I told my family, like, I got insight from my friends. We had conversations. Drew and I had conversations before. It was fucked up beyond belief,
Yeah. Being a person who in history and in my lifetime has normally been very well associated and affirmed with Black culture, in the sense that, like, I made music that's predominantly from the African American heritage. I've been very involved in streetwear, which comes from predominantly African American people. So I've been very connected to this my entire life. And when I saw these kinds of things happen, Audney, you make a great point with Trayvon, is the idea of, like, at this point, years and years, like, we've been going on, it's gotten to the point where it's no longer even shocking, that it's just tiring. Like, wow, is this continuing to happen? Like, you continuously can't believe that we're still in this scenario. And we'll get into it a little more later, but now, after so much time and seeing the polarizing effect of police brutality and racism against African Americans, I've come to a real different conclusion. Because at first, I think, just like everybody else, we were shocked to hear when this has been going on for a very long time. But when it really started to spark up in the social media era is when you started to get a lot of reaction, a lot of visceral reaction from a lot of different races. Everyone was very understanding that this was something that needed to be fixed. But then actual effective change never occurred. So we continued to live in that same society, and we continued to just be shocked. So at this point, I sit in the conversation me and River had before, and the conversation we'll have today, I'm trying now to be an objective observer, because what I've seen is the emotional route is now becoming something that's overlooked almost. From my perspective, what I've tried to do in deciphering these things and having reactions is to take myself away from my perspective and not only see the perspectives of the people suffering, but see the perspectives of the oppressors, and try to figure out what path do we take now to actually make effective change? Like, what has to be done? Because it's obvious that a lot of the stuff that we've been trying to do isn't working effectively. So where do we go from here is where I'm at now. And with that, I'd like to start. That's kind of where I'd like to go on. Like, Audney and Carliene, I want you guys to chime in. What do you think the path is now? Where do we go from here? Do you agree with the riots? How do you feel about them in general? Like, where do you feel that we go from here forward in terms of moving towards a society that actually makes change towards this?
For me, change change is really hard because for the riots, I am in full support of them. And some people may be like, oh my gosh, why are they looting? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Well, here's a perspective. Well, I'm not like doing that to you, but like, here's a
course.
perspective, people. We peacefully kneeled.
Mm.
We peacefully kneeled, and you guys got so enraged that we were kneeling during a racist national anthem that degrades us. There's a missing verse. You fired Colin Kaepernick, and all these things have been done so that we cannot peacefully protest, which we've been doing for years, and especially in the last 8 to 10 years, we've been peacefully protesting.
Agreed. Yeah.
So when it comes to another life being taken in a country, mind you, that we were slaves and we built this country, why do you think people are not going to react? Target is $1 billion corporation. Target has insurance. A lot of people say that, oh, the rioters are using this to go loot. Okay. Capitalism does not benefit the Black community. Capitalism oppresses us. If we're gonna take this to Corona, we the black population are the majority for essential workers. We're also the majority to be dying during this pandemic because we do not have access to healthcare. So all these injustices are happening to a community that built this country. Burn it down, because there have been riots for many years, the French Revolution, the Boston Tea Party. But do you really think that we got out of slavery because we peacefully protested? No, there was a fucking war.
Agreed.
The civil rights movement, you think that that they were just walking? Oh yeah, shout out to MLK. No, we rioted for our rights just so that we could drink at the same fucking water fountain as you. When we peacefully protested for our constitution, when what's that thing with Jigger? Huey, what's that thing? Hold on, I'm drawing a blank. Angela Davis, the Black Panther Party. There we go.
Yes.
We used guns, and then the FBI said that we were a terrorist group. But y'all can peacefully protest with your guns and spit in police officers' faces because you want a haircut. That's the end of my point.
Before you jump in, Carly, I just want to, this is an unfavorable perspective, but it's one I want to give because I feel it'll create a good conversation here. You mentioned things as though, like, rioting is your solution to solve. I understand the perspective that peaceful protesting obviously didn't work. So something else had to be done. That does make sense. Before I go into my point, I just like to say, like, in my personal belief, I am against the idea of rioting, just in general. That's a definite thing I'll mention, and that frames my argument now. Isn't there something to be said about the fact that the rioting, right, the aggression in the opposition of oppression creates almost a stigma or ammo for oppressors to blame minorities for aggression? Because, and now I say this because from your perspective, which is justified and correct in my opinion, when you're fed up, there's no point. Something has to be done. But isn't there something to be said that from the oppressor's point of view, this is now ammo they can use to justify their reasonings that, no matter what happens, they're just going to get aggressive?
Well, I think regardless whether we're rioting or not, they're forever and always going to find a way to twist our behavior to somehow be aggressive, as somehow an excuse for their behavior towards us. Especially, I feel like we've talked about this so much within our school's BSUA, like what are our next steps? Like what can we actually do to enforce long-lasting positive change? Personally, my number one concern with the riots is that other people are going to die. Other people have died in these riots. And I just think the bloodshed is a lot. I think the violence is a lot. I completely understand the anger. Because I truly believe that those who don't hear will feel.
Totally.
And right now, that state needs to feel.
Of course.
that state definitely needs to feel. But like, I just don't know if like the measures that they're taking are the safest measures. You
Yes.
know, I definitely
Agreed.
think that it's valid. I definitely am not against what they're doing. I just don't want any more people to lose their lives as a result
Totally.
of what an officer did, who at the moment justice is not being served at all.
Definitely.
Yeah. Also, another thing that I have a problem with is the mockery of the situation. I don't know if you guys have seen that wrestling coach who demonstrated that that position could not kill somebody. All right. There was also a mayor from another state who said that if he could talk, then he could breathe. And things like that makes me mute my notifications. Things like that makes me kind of detach from social media from a little bit, because I realize that no matter what, even though there's video evidence and we can see this man being murdered in broad daylight on the concrete in front of so many witnesses, that people still don't care and will still somehow find a way to support the oppressor.
That's a
And
great
again,
point.
like with the narrative of you know, of the riots,
Yeah.
like what Carliene said, there will always be this stigma for the on the Black community that we are just dangerous. Even from before with the peaceful protests, it was just, oh, we are just dangerous, we're this, we're that. For me, like, this is probably again like a really controversial thing that I'm gonna say, but some lives are gonna be, some lives actually do have to be lost for there to be any sort of justice. Like, there wouldn't have been, like, he would not be in jail right now if there were no riots. It wouldn't have happened so fast. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
They only put him in jail for his own safety. And for people to be that mad because people know, you know, like George Zimmerman, okay. Also, I don't believe that he's going to be convicted anyways. But like these murderers, these white nationalists, white supremacists who feel as though it is okay to take a Black life in that manner, for you to kneel on somebody's neck for 8 minutes, I don't have the words, and I'm outraged, and that's why people are reacting in this way. That's why there's this big uproar across the country.
Agree. So
wait, so do you guys what do you guys believe that the riot will change? Like, do you guys, like, what effects does the riot have to
It
society as
gives
a whole?
pressure. It shows that there's a lot of pressure on the lawmakers, on the political leaders, for them to try to understand why we are mad. Because again, with peace, we've been peacefully protesting, and they protested our protests. They protest our protests every day with White Lives Matter, with Blue Lives Matter, and with All Lives Matter. That is a protest to our protest. And again, they fired Colin Kaepernick for kneeling. So with all these things that we do, with all of our peaceful protests, what's next for us? For the Black community to not be segregated, we had to riot, and that's the only way we got our freedom.
Now, you
And I
made a good
definitely
point.
think that
Sorry.
it's sad that we even have to apply pressure like this in order to be heard.
Yeah.
Because it's not like there wasn't video evidence. It's not like they had to go search security tapes from stores nearby to figure out who that man in a Black hoodie is. Like, they know who this man is. They've seen him wear make whites great again on his hat. Like, his past shows that this is his character, and for some reason after all these years he still had his job. And it wasn't until people said something and spoke up and the evidence was on video for them to take action and fire him, because this is not his first offense. This is something he's done before and got away with multiple
And
times.
not just to Black people to indigenous, native Alaskan, is that the word, Alaskan man, to a Latino male, to Black men, and to Black women.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is not a one-time thing, you know, and just the fact that the system allowed him to get away with it for so long already shows you that the problem didn't start this Memorial Day when they killed George Floyd. This has been a problem since the beginning of time.
Yeah. And with that, I want to make a quick point, because you made a lot of good points about the oppression twisting the evidence, the ideas, and using that oppression to almost negate the pressure that it's been put on by the African American community for so long. And with that, I give this. You know, I think a lot about the age we live in, of the democratization of information, where with social media, everybody seemingly has a much more powerful voice than we used to. And in that sense, that now we have this ability, it not only creates pros, but it creates cons. Because what it does do is water down information to the point where it can be unchecked, unverified, it can be completely partisan biased, and still gain a massive amount of attention. So with that, I give this. When you talk about creating effective change in the long term, I believe that a more effective form, rather than, right, I understand rioting in a visceral sense. I understand reactions of emotion. But from a purely objective and logical standpoint, I feel there should be a reasoning to almost play the same game, as we've seen for a very long time. The perfect example is Donald Trump's presidency. His entire presidency is based on the Republican Party's ability to manipulate the information age we live in. They constantly manipulate information in the Republican favor. So I give it this, rather than giving them almost, revolutionary stance or rioting or all these things. Isn't it more effective to play that game, in the sense that if you can manipulate information on your end? Now, I understand this isn't exactly like a noble pursuit, but we live in a different reality here. We don't live in an ideal world. So if, just like the oppression, the minorities took a chance to attempt to manipulate mass information in their favor against the oppressors, just like the Republicans have done for many years, don't you believe that that would be a much more effective way to create long-term change?
I feel, firstly, Drew, I love you, but you don't have to say African American, because I'm not African American. You can say Black.
Right,
it's not a slur. I think a lot of people need to know that Black is not a slur. For the manipulation of information for the Black community, I would say it's a lot harder than just that.
No,
because yeah, I feel like for effective change, for that part of the question, it starts with us working the systems. But if we're gonna go back to why it's even harder for us to get to those systems, to get to that place where we can be in the system, it goes back to the where we don't have access to the same education. A big majority of us, especially in America, do not. If for the people that are unaware of why I'm saying this, is that there's something called redlining, and that divides communities of class.
Mm-hmm.
And those communities of class, those ghettos, are people, slaves that had to settle there, and those communities never improved in a socioeconomic matter. Therefore, with Black communities being subjected to poverty, and those impoverished communities do not have the same level of education as the majority do, it really plays a big role in how we're able to get into the systems to fix or change these laws and these legislations that continuously oppress us. And not only that, is that in economic standpoint, America's built off of capitalism. And capitalism, how Americans benefit and benefited from capitalism, was a result of slavery. And we were enslaved to build up an economic system which still oppresses us. So when we're coming back to what is effective change, how can there be effective change? this is just something I'm going to say because I am a beneficiary of capitalism.
Totally.
We all are, but at the end of the day, effective change comes with taking down capitalism
Uh-huh.
because that's what oppresses us. But I'm not going to say that's what we have to do right now.
Yeah.
What right now, something that Carliene and I always talk about is Black girls and Black boys need to be the lawmakers. We need to be the politicians. We need to be in the House and in the Senate. And we need to do that even though it's a broken system, even though that we may not be some Black people may not work for our community in those systems.
Uh-huh.
However, we can bring a perspective that will have a great impact on these laws that oppress us and that contribute to police brutality and to the systems of racism. Because let me tell you this, if there was anti-Black racism initiatives in the police force statewide, nationwide, in each state, in each municipality, this would not be a reoccurring issue.
Of course.
And that's what I have to say to that.
And so I have some opposition to what you're saying in the sense that the main thing I want to start with is capitalism. And it's not as much of an opposition as much as I'd like to present a different frame of mind. And the first example I give is, rest in peace, but Nipsey. And the reason I give this example is this. Instead of being opposed to capitalism, I find it to be more effective to use the tools of capitalism to your favor and your advantage. And the Nipsey story, for those who don't know, is a simple idea that if you forget all the struggle that Nipsey went through, I won't even go through that because that doesn't matter. What matters is that when he did redeem some success, he invested that not only into his community, but into himself. The Puma deal he had put him at the forefront of their creative department. The marathon story he had, he was the owner of that entire complex. These kinds of moves are society-wise, as we've gone in history, have been things that minorities don't do. It's especially the African-American minority, just but by pure facts.
Black.
Yeah, sorry, the black community.
No, but I'm going to cut you off. I'm so sorry.
No.
But you were correct. You were correct in the way that a lot of these ignorant ass motherfucking social justice warriors want to say that, oh, if you support Black capitalism, you're anti-Black. No. No, people like Nipsey, people like T.I., people like Killer Mike are trying to redistribute the Black dollar, one of the wealthiest dollars that is not in the Black community, because we put billions and billions of dollars in our economy each year, whether it's our hair. You know, I'm so sorry, Carly. I know you want to speak, but I'm just going to end with this, that again, what we speak about this almost every single day, that we need to be at the front lines of this system of capitalism. And we need to be the entrepreneurs. We need to be running billion-dollar corporations. We do need to be doing that. And we need to understand that our community should be what is running us, like what inspires us to do that, so that we can, again, redistribute that Black dollar and help build up the next generation, the next young, influential, smart, intelligent Black entrepreneurs, so that they can, again, redistribute that dollar.
Most definitely. Carliene?
Well, I think that the ladder to success is a little bit different, especially since a lot of opportunities are limited. I definitely realized that when I moved to Guelph. I realized that the opportunities over here are a lot different than where I was coming from. And I think that some people don't realize that even their environment simply gives them privilege over a lot of other people. Some people don't have choices of where they live. They live where their money can take them. And sadly, in a lot of these communities and these neighborhoods, lack of resources from when they're younger, like that affects them for their whole life because they were unable to build a solid foundation. And that's why, like, I live by thug life, the hate you give little infants fucks everyone. Because the second you teach and you instill things into children from when they're younger, and they grow up with these values and they grow up with these morals and they grow up with these ideologies, and it honestly creates animosity, because a lot of these kids will drop out of school and end up in gangs.
Mm.
And now are not only hurting themselves, are hurting their communities, are hurting their families. And it's obviously not contributing to society in a positive way, all from the lack of resources from when they were children.
Agreed.
And we're not talking about, again, we're talking about like here in Ontario, here in Canada. Carliene is from Brampton, Ontario.
Yeah.
There we go.
No,
Yeah,
definitely.
like
It's
this is
something that
close to
hits at home. It's not just something that's just happening. It is happening in our areas, in our vicinities almost. Um, Now, there's one other point I like to make. We talk a lot about lack of resources, lack of development for Black youth, lack of understanding in helping them succeed. And I counterpoint with this. I talk a lot about the information age because the context is very important. The context that we live in now is very important. And just as I was talking about before, that the information age brings cons and pros, one of the major pros is that it's empowered every individual more than ever. I'm not saying that, it's an immediate path to success, but what social media and the online age that we live in has done is provided every single person, regardless of anything at this point, a opportunity equitable to everybody else to be able to succeed, in the simple sense that social media has provided a platform for you to create what you want to create and succeed at what you want to succeed, monetize things that you didn't even think were monetizable 20 years ago. Everything from this podcast is now monetizable to the podcast that you may be putting on later, Audney, becomes monetizable. All these different things. My entire life has been built based on social media. Every business I've run. And in the same sense, I give this, is it so much a lack of resources or a lack of learning? Because the resources are there now, in the sense that the opportunity when it comes to social media and the online age we have, the opportunity is given to all in most senses. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist online. It's probably even more prevalent online. But the difference is that there's a lot more freedom to act online. So I'd like to know what you think about that.
Can I go, Carly?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna give this one example to rebut that. Okay, you are right to a point. If we go to TikTok, for instance, TikTok, most of these, like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, for me to find somebody who looks like me, I have to type in Black. If I look on all the hashtags that Black, all the Black dancers, I have to, you won't see the creators of the Black dancers. You'll only see a bunch of middle class, rich white kids dancing to our shit. And we don't even get credit for that. These Charlie DeMille, hello, whatever the fuck her name is. I don't hate her, but like, just with the whole renegade thing,
Yeah.
if that little Black girl did not fight for recognition,
Yeah.
she is now getting deals because she fought for that. And that's the thing. A lot of Black content creators, our content is being stolen for the bigger white people. And if we even create content, it's harder for us to be up there because we are not white. I have a nigger nose. I have nigga everything. My hair is nigga. Like I am a nigga. Because at the end of the day, I cannot go on Google and type in hairstyle. I have to put in Black
Black
hairstyle.
girl. Oh man.
I have to refine that, because even if I put in cornrows, I'm gonna see dumbass, ugly, bitch ass Kim Kardashian wearing boxer braids.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's I understand where you're coming from, because we are able to monetize it, but where's when you're living paycheck to paycheck, I'm going to go back to a lot of low income communities. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you cannot buy a G7X. You cannot buy a MacBook. You cannot buy.
Wait, but that's I want to just cut you off there. That's sorry. I just want to make one point clear. I take this from, and if you don't want to quote me on it, I quote Gary Vee when I talk about things like this. For people that don't know, he's a business titan and an influencer in social media. And I take a lot of his lessons in the sense that we come to an age where those kinds of resources aren't exactly necessary anymore. These days, you can do the same thing with, an iPhone, which even low income neighborhoods, most people have maybe not the iPhone 11, but the iPhone 8 or iPhone 10, which still has a pixel resolution that works. I'm shooting this right now on a laptop that I got on multiple sale deals. Like, I bargained for this thing to happen.
Yep.
Everything that I've put on, I've spent zero cash. So what I give to that is this, and this applies to everybody, not just Black people. What I'm saying is, we talk about a lot of the limitations to people starting on social media and starting to create what they want to create is my budget, my income. I got to do other stuff. And I get that. But what I pose to this, and this is directly ripped from Gary, and I hope I don't get any copyright for this, but the idea is that your income is your income, but your expenditures can be changed. And the way I look at it is, and I understand in low income communities, it is much, much harder. It is much, much harder. But the one thing that is available is the ability to devote time. Because at this point, it's more of a lack of monetary resources and more a lack of effort resources, in the sense that the more time you put into these content brands, the better it gets for you. And what I've seen is that, it is a thing of privilege. Obviously, middle-class kids often have more time. Middle-class parents, people who don't live low income, have more time to do these things. But even then, I stress that, you can put that time and effort. I still believe, even in low-income communities, that time still exists. And so as long as you have the time, I am a genuine believer, because I've proven it in many scenarios, that it is possible to monetize content and increase your current scenario. You increase your income even.
Yeah, but with that content creation, with starting, of course you can start. There are amazing Black content creators, but we have to work 10 times harder for our content to be even seen, to be recognized. People are like, it's very evident, and of course, low income, for class sakes, yes, there's different things, but especially regarding race, it is a lot different for Black content creators, because the only way that you're really gonna blow up is if you dance like a fucking monkey, if you are clout chasing, if you put all your money on your face, if you're wearing chains, if you're doing this, if you're looking like a stereotypical nigga. That's the only way that's one of the big reasons why a lot of Black content creators blow up. Carliene, speak on this.
Drew, I just have one question for you. Like,
Yeah.
your background and your knowledge on all of this, like, where did you gain access to this? Like, how did
So
you gain knowledge on this?
the all access I got was completely through my own research. Like, I never, if you want to go way back, like music, I never knew what the fuck I was doing. I went to Future Shop and I was never getting an allowance. I didn't have a job.
This
I
guy
went
said
to
Future Shop.
No, I'm dead ass. Future Shop don't exist anymore. Shut up, Future Shop. I would go to the refurbished bin. So I had my dad's like 10 to 20-year-old laptop I was recording on. I didn't know how to use any of the software. I would go to Future Shop with the pocket change my dad gave me for my birthday, and I bought one of the stick mics that they used to have. You don't even see them anymore. They're desktop mics. They're just like a big stick.
Yeah.
And I recorded on that for the first 4 years. I only bought this after I worked my ass off in seafood at Metro, and I used my entire paycheck on this. So everything I've learned has been completely independent of the school system, completely independent of no one mentored me in this. It was purely through online, which is why I'm such a big believer in that opportunity.
Okay. So that's also with the assumption that people have access to internet, that people can even afford internet or cable. I understand that, obviously. I don't like to make excuses. I don't like to highlight problems,
No, of course.
Obviously, like, there is a lack of resources, but there are obviously ways around things like this. People find ways around this to build up. It's just that it's that ladder to success. It's like there are pieces missing, just like with TikTok. It's like the viewership is different because, one, Black people only make up 13% of America's overall population, which means that the majority is just so much more, 60% compared to 13. Like, the numbers, like the gap is huge.
Of course.
So already that sets us at a disadvantage for viewership. And then it's the fact that they take from our culture, and they get the recognition for it. Like, how many times growing up where dreads and braids and all this stuff was seen as messy, not professional. People would lose their jobs based off of the way they carried themselves. But the second the Kardashians have any type of braids in their head, then it's cute. Then you see everyone on the TL, all these white girls with braids in their head. They'll go to Jamaica and come back with cornrows, and it's just like
it's
just
frustrating.
you guys are just things that we get slandered for. You guys are praised for,
and it's frustrating. And I give this point. Sorry, I just want to tell you this.
Go
ahead. I give this point to that in the sense that yes, it is frustrating. Yes, it is angering. It would make any minority, even if it was a white thing, it would make anyone angry. That makes sense. I understand that. But now that this is happening, it's not just happening now. It's been happening for generations. Shouldn't there be a mind switch to I'm not going to say accepting, because that's the wrong word to use, but understanding that this is the way it is, and then creating for yourself. And going back, I'll again revere to my last point, which is why I respect what you guys are doing with the podcast and the content and the social media engagement, in the sense that we're not accepting what's going on right now, but we're understanding the reality that we live in. We're understanding where we stand and what's going on. We understand our place. We understand what's happening. Whether we like it or not is a completely different story. We understand it. And now let's take successive steps to try to fill in that ladder for success, because the first 10 generations may not fill that ladder in. But if we continue to have the mindset that we can, and we continue to build the ladder, at a certain point, change will come, in the sense that ladder will start to fill in, because people like you two who start to create content, aren't afraid to say what they want to say, do things because they want to, and understand the reality we live in and look to fight that. The continuation of what you guys are doing and reaching out is going to affect the youth, and it's going to affect them continually, because now they're seeing people move ahead, and they've always been seeing this. But I think that if we could incorporate that as a society, in terms of Black people in general doing that, more Black people being involved in these creative streams. I'm not saying that it's an immediate gain scenario. I'm not saying that it's something that may happen in your lifetime, your child's lifetime, or the other lifetime. But I'm a big believer in generational change, because I don't think any effective change comes in just one generation. In general, I don't think that happens. So with that, I give this. Is it not more productive to understand the reality and society, and instead of combating, all that stuff, looking to create for your community, looking to provide opportunities for your community, looking internally? And I give this because of my experience in minority. See, the thing with Indians is, our oppression happened a very, very long time ago, to the point where it's not relevant at all to a lot of scenarios. We've recovered a lot from it. At this point, it's pretty equal now. But if you talk to any Indian family, if you talk to most Indian people, they're fairly conservative. And not conservative in the sense of the way white people are, and I'm talking like that. I'm talking in the sense of conservative internally, where Indian people look towards Indian people. We don't mess with the outside. My mother is still, in some senses, a racist, if you wanted to call it, because her views are that we stick to our own, we stick with ourselves, and we don't worry about everybody else. And that's what I try to propose to the Black community, in the sense that the internal view, I understand it's way tougher. I'm not even trying to compare the scenario. I'm really not. I'm just providing a background to my perspective here. It's the sense that I get it's going to be 10 times harder, but is it not more effective and productive, and also less taxing, in the sense of emotional taxing, to look internally to each other and work productively within your community in hopes of impactful generational change?
Okay, yes. Carliene, can I speak of this?
In an ideal world, I think that we're stronger together, united as one. We move as one unit. But in reality, that's not the way things are set up. I think that I understand that there are issues within the Black community, within ourselves. But I think for today's topic at hand, we need to, yes, rebuilding within ourselves is important, but I also think that the way things are moving, if we want to move forward, we're going to need to move forward together, because North America is not like the other side of the world, where most countries people have only one race within their country, where America has so many different people coming from so many different backgrounds of life. Like, how can you welcome people into your country and then treat them different? Not even welcome. I don't think Black people were welcomed. We were kind of forced. We were not even welcomed in the first place. So it's just kind of showing that generational disrespect. You know, I would like to look at the flip side of it, and look at why white parents are not educating their children. Why racism is still being taught to young children, why the cycle is continuing on their end. Because I definitely feel like we have protested, we are rioting, we have taken steps towards a better, more equal future. Whereas they really want to hold on to their dominance. They want to hold on to their position of power, and they're not willing to relinquish their position.
And that's my point. That's my point, right? Like, what I'm trying to say, and you're actually saying exactly what I'm trying to say, is that isn't that taxing? Is after the data we've seen over the generations of fighting against the oppressive force, hasn't it become almost ineffective in certain senses? Like, the most change we're getting after this full-scale attack is third-degree murder for one police officer and 3 free ones. So I understand the need to do it, but after so much work to attempt those things, isn't there a certain change in the mind to be like, okay, this is obviously not working. We need to pick a different strategy, a different methodology.
And okay, I understand what you're saying. I really do. I'm gonna start with a quote: "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind." Bob Marley. We are suffering as a community from post-traumatic slave disorder. You guys probably know this. You guys are too educated people, but you guys also have a platform that I can't reach. Maybe I'm gonna call you out. Like, a lot of ignorant ass people listen to this podcast. I don't know if they're gonna listen to this fully, but post-traumatic slave disorder is present in the Black community. It's present myself because, well, for a person from the diaspora, I don't know my great 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 grandmother. I don't know where they're from. They were a slave, beaten and raped. I don't know my last name. My last name is Stewart, from the master. Okay, so these things, post-traumatic slave disorder, why I'm bringing this up is that whenever I have a conversation with a Black person, with the Black, like, oh, look at the Indians, them see they're with each other, they live in their houses and they get each other up in the systems, they come here, we all talk about that. We're like, why can't Black people be like that? Why can't Black people be like the Chinese man who runs Chlore? Why can't we have family businesses? I'm sorry, I'm making these generalizations.
No, I get, that's my question. I want you to answer this. Do it as you want. This is my question.
So with these things, I would love for us to have more Black businesses support. I'm a very strong advocate for Black businesses, but at the end of the day, we are still divided internally and externally. Again, I'm a part of the diaspora. My heritage is from Jamaica, but if we look at the diaspora, if we look at Africa and we look at America and Canada right now, these are people taken out from everywhere. The borders created in Africa were from a white man. So with that generational struggle, that puts us back with how we view each other as a community. So with that, when we're trying to support each other, we're like, okay, so now let's start with our community. It's, oh, so-and-so did that, so-and-so took my man, so I'm gonna do this, so-and-so, like, there's so much hatred, there's so much anger towards each other. Oh, I don't want to support her business because
competition. So much competition. There's
so much competition. Oh, I can't start a lash brand because this one did that. I can't do hair. She can't braid my hair. Like, it's all this petty BS. But at the end of the day, we're still all niggers. We're still all nigga. Like, I'm saying these slurs because I'm trying to take that into power. I'm trying to say that
No, agreed.
we hate each other, and we're in this place where we are still mentally enslaved.
Mm.
And um for back to your question, why can't we just, isn't it taxing, you said that, isn't it
Uh-huh.
taxing for us to just react, like not take, I don't know what she said again. What was your question?
My point was just that over such a long time, right? The Black community has continuously looked to fight back, which is great. It's awesome.
Mhm.
But after a certain time, when you take a step back and you look at the amount of fighting you had to do and the amount of change that actually came, isn't there a certain place where you sit and say, this is not working? The amount of effort we are putting in to make change is not creating the change we wanted. So maybe it's time to change the way we're putting effort. And that's when I talk about looking internally. That's when I talk about looking. And before you come back, I'll just give you this, because you mentioned the border thing, which I really actually want to talk about. So the British created the Indian borders. India was Pakistan and Pakistan was India at one point, and they created that border. And ever since then, there has been a systematic grievance between Pakistan and India, completely manufactured by a white oppressor.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this in I guess in a form of hope, because the benefit that my minority had is that happened much more like longer ago. It happened at much earlier point. So we had the chance to go through the mental enslavement, the post-traumatic, the Gandhis. We had the chance to recover and then grow. And now we're at a point where that stuff is behind us. So now you don't hear that often with the Indian and almost the Asian. River can speak on that a little more, but almost the Asian in general. That's kind of past in a certain sense. It's still around in smaller areas, but compared to the Black struggle, it's definitely not the same. So with that, I give this. If we look back at our history, and I always look back at history because it's the lessons we learn that change our future. And so if you look back and you look at the point where Indian people started by fighting British oppression and then decided to congregate and create Indian power and then peacefully come out of it after they had already created their own society that worked within the British system and was independent of the British system, then they decided to revolt. And then they decided to say, hey, look, we don't even need you anymore. So I give that same thing. Again, we live in a different era. The context has changed. But in those same principles, I look at this. Why not change the mindset from, instead of fighting back, let's revert and let's change to looking internally to become independent of it. I understand it's way harder,
Yeah,
but I
but
give
adding
that
on
point.
to that, like giving a Black country with parallels, Haiti was the first nation to revolt against the white man, to get rid and abolish slavery.
Yeah.
Look at how they are now, extreme poverty. They have access to nothing.
Agreed.
They're in a terrible economic state, and it's a prime example of how we tried it. Was it 1600s or 1700s? We tried it, and it just kind of came back and slapped us in the face.
Yeah, but with that, again, and I use your counterpoint to this because you were mentioning the hatred within the societies of Black people. And that's what I bring to Haiti. As much as I'd like to say that, yes, the community in Haiti did, I almost look at it as it's not over yet, is the way I'm kind of trying to phase it, is that there's still a lot of hate. There's a lot of problems within the community in Haiti. If you, the idea that, and again, India still hasn't gotten over this, in the sense that poverty is inevitable for rising countries and races. It is a point that people have to pass. There's an economic portion from third world to second to first. It's a way that it has worked. The only thing that you can say is that white people got lucky because they were first. So they were the first to go through poverty and then come up. So in that same sense, I look at this. Can you not have faith in the cycle that it will occur for the Black people too? Because right now, the attempts are almost set back by the internal conflict within the community. And I'm not saying that that's not normal or it's something that's only happens in Black communities, because it's definitely not. Every other minority it's very competitive. If you talk about the Asian minority in general, it's very competitive in terms of internally. But the internal conflicts happen in a constructive manner, where now our internal conflicts aren't like we hate this person, we hate that person. It's more in the sense of like, why are they doing better than we are? Why are we not putting on for our community, and why are they putting on for our community? And that boils down to the household conversations where like your friend who's also brown got a 90 and you got an 80. Why? So that hatred is almost constructive, because what it does is it forces youth to continue to excel. And so that's what I try to say is I see that happening in the future for Black communities as well, because it's almost inevitable in the sense that right now the hatred is almost at a baseline. It's at a deconstructive perspective. But if we continue to have leaders like you guys and other people who continue to try to put on and strive for Black excellence, then the shift will go from a hate that's deconstructive to a hate that is constructive, to internal minority competitiveness that creates elevation for your community. And that's what I counterpoint to that, is that Haiti, yes, they tried, but with a lot of almost tribal hate. Whereas it wasn't a hate towards excellence. Why is that person doing better than I am? That's the questions that the Black community should be asking, is why is Audney doing more for my community than I am? I should be doing more. That kind of hatred and competitiveness is constructive. So my question to you is do you not believe that that'll happen? Or are you waiting for it to happen? Or do you want it to happen? What's your perspective on that?
I definitely think that it's going to take time to change the mindsets of people.
Agreed.
Because obviously people need to think a certain way, and in order for this to work, we all need to have a common goal.
Agreed.
I just think that there's just been a lot of built up anger and not enough healing within the Black community. And I think that that is the biggest barrier right now, is that everyone is, I don't want to say broken, because I don't believe we're broken. But I just think that we're just a little bit set apart, because again, everyone expresses the way they're feeling differently. We tried to start off peaceful, but then again, it's no longer being peaceful. I think that yes, our mindset may need to change a little bit for us to be able to make more progress. Like I said, we are stronger together. It's just, how do we approach it? How do we convince people that this is the best option? You know?
Definitely a good question. Agreed.
And
And I
also,
think, sorry, no, go on.
oh no, just like believe, like hoping that we will be stronger as a unit, or that it will happen to the Black community. Again, speaking on the diaspora and colonialism, colonization of these places, is that the British, their history lessons, what we're being taught, because at the end of the day, it comes with education. So firstly, here in Ontario, here in Canada, we are not taught about the Black history. Okay, that's why I'm very passionate towards Black History Month assemblies, because we're not taught about the history of what Black people have gone through here. Because at the end of the day, some people think that Canada's a fucking utopia, about it doesn't exist here. No, I'm sorry. Segregation was present in Windsor, Ontario. Anyways, that's a different conversation. But again, history lessons in America, the history has been manipulated. And so
Agreed.
when and also speaking on Jamaica, a British system, they don't teach you that they went and there was mass genocide to every indigenous person on Jamaica's land, and then just things like that. So when we're constantly being taught the white savior narrative towards how this world has come to be, I feel like that really damages Black people individually. Because not only that is that happens, I'm sorry, I'm overexposed, but that happens in Africa itself, because the British, okay, the British have stripped away culture and history from countries in Africa. So then, with that, all this history being manipulated, we're basically being taught for generations that we are not good enough, we are less than, there's someone superior, and that we can never become something. And that really has a big impact on the Black community as a whole.
Yeah.
So again, we should pray for unionship again as a community.
Yeah.
But that goes back to the systems. What are we learning? How are we trying to uplift this community that you can see is constantly being oppressed in the media, and the narratives that are being shown on social media is this negative, derogatory way and viewpoint of the Black community. So again, with everyone seeing this, like in Jamaica, in the 60s, I Shot the Sheriff, sung by Bob Marley, that song comes from the Black Jamaican police criminalizing the Rastafaris, people who wear dreads. So now there's a stigma of, oh, so that's a criminal. When I fear to hang out with that person, Mr. Man is a criminal. So then you're criminalizing the people in your own community. Because there's the history, like there's so much missing pieces that goes back to colonialism, that goes back to capitalism, that goes back to these white dominated systems. And it's, oh my gosh, why is the Black community why are they not unions? Why are they not helping their own people?
Agreed.
How can we? There was 400 plus years of slavery. There was 60, 90 years of segregation. And now there's a war on drugs. There's mass incarceration. Young Black boys and Black women are being put in jail. Rest in peace to Khalif Browder. That man was put in one of the most dangerous jails in America because of an alleged stolen backpack, and then killed himself. So again, I'm angry, but like when it comes to, again, we need to heal as a community. Where does that healing start? Because I could not give you the answer. And I understand that you're asking these questions, but I don't even know where that could start, because there's so much pain. And again, going back to George Floyd, going back to Amy Cooper, going back to Ahmed, going back to Breonna Taylor, who was killed in her house during a police raid, going back to Trayvon, going back to Eric, going back to Sandra Bland, going back to Fausto Castile, going back to Alton Sterling. Those are just a few names.
Agreed.
Going back to these lives. It pains, it hurts us even more. We are triggered every time we see a Black man die, a Black woman get killed. And it's like, will healing ever begin?
Definitely. And that's actually some very good insight. And that's the reason I pose these questions. I don't expect an answer. I almost just want a conversation. No, I understand that there certainly aren't answers in certain senses. This is a very broad topic where change is something that we won't even see in our lifetime, maybe. And as I understand that, what I wanted to do with this is just create a forum for conversation, so that not only could me and River be informed, but everyone else watching could be informed. A place where we could have a conversation away from social media sensationalization, away from everything else, on a platform where we just speak genuinely. Now, I'd like to communicate some other stuff off camera, but for now, because of our runtime, and I have to keep in track that everyone's listening, and because it is genuine talks with Drew and River hasn't peeked a word, I want to shift the conversation to something that River can opine on, and I really think this is a perspective I want to get on, is that being an influencer in any regard, and whether or not you should feel for or be involved in racism, what are the criteria there? And River, like the question I got for you, man, and this is a question that we can all answer almost, is that as an influencer, someone who has followers that people listen to, platforms that...
But he's not following me.
I bet you. I told you. That's a different tea we'll talk about. But River, as an influencer, man, do you purposely attempt to stay away from racism? Because that's a fair point. I'm not gonna lie. It is a fair point to stay away from those topics.
Stay away from racism?
in terms of like your platform? Do you look to do that, or is it just something that you just feel that you don't have an impact on, or that you just don't have a keen interest in? Like, what's your thoughts on that,
It's just not, honestly, yeah, it's just not interesting to me. It's not it's not relevant to my life where I deem it to be a big problem. So I just stray away from it, focus on other
Yeah,
things in life, you know.
I find
Audney, go ahead, Audney.
man? Go talk. No,
Like,
No,
this
like
is
I
the
think
genuine
Carlene and
talk.
I are on the same page. Like that is just out
yeah,
of privilege.
probably.
That
Yeah.
is. Were you thinking the same thing, Carlene?
that's I find that statement to be very interesting, you know, because like I don't know, like I just think that regular everyday injustices, whether it has anything to do with you personally or not, um, I don't know, maybe we're not aware of certain things, but I think that just simple sympathy, you know, for another group that you see are being treated unfairly, just to say, hey, I'm an ally. Hey, I don't stand for this. Hey, I think this is wrong. Just to say something super simple like that and to inform your platform, who may not also be part of the Black community, about these issues so that they can also be aware. Just like we're talking a lot about education, we need to learn and we need to spread information so that people can take it upon themselves to teach themselves how to carry themselves in a lot of these certain situations and how to help. So simple things you can do: donate, sign a petition, you know.
Yeah,
um
yeah.
even
Facts.
if it doesn't impact you personally, I think that using your platform to let people know that this certain behavior or this situation is wrong, you know, just to reaffirm that you don't stand with the racist claims or the behaviors of the officers, because I definitely feel like your silence is saying something else, that you are uncomfortable to stand with this group, you are comfortable to be related to Black Lives Matter for another reason. Like there has to be an underlining reason as to why you feel like you cannot speak out. Not necessarily that you don't relate to it, but I think that there has to be another reason why you couldn't just say that what's going on is wrong.
Mhm.
And like adding on to Carlene's point, uh, and you guys know this, like, there's a lot of anti-Black racism in the East Asian community, and when COVID was happening, you know, there was this uproar of xenophobia and racism towards the East Asian community, and for me, at least, like for my friend group, for the Black people I know, we're like, yo, that ain't cool. At my church, at Mississauga Seventh Day Adventist Church, we share a facility with the Chinese Seventh Day Adventist Church, and when that was happening, we were able to provide resources for them. And it's like the Black community has fought for a lot of minority groups and a lot of people of color, but then when it comes down to it, where are those same people? Like, I'm going to speak on GCVI. There's been a lot of ignorant things said by the Asian community as a whole towards Black people, and more specifically the East Asian community. I remember in grade 9, this Asian girl said that this Black girl looked like a monkey.
Oh
And
The
shit,
fuck?
that's
yeah,
mud.
and
Wait.
I've heard these people say the N-word. I've heard these people do this and that. I've heard, like,
Oh, let me stop right there. Sorry, just because this is relevant. I want to talk about the N word. I missed that a while ago because I really do want to talk about this. This is something I want to discuss because, and I'll give my 2 cents to the people watching, is that I'm a culprit of it. There's no question. And me and Audney have debated it and
yes,
fought it
yes.
many a time. River is in the same boat. Like we both have used the word. We both have continued to use it. I used to use it in my music and made a conscious decision to remove it. Not because of any outside perspective, just because it wasn't something for me to say. But even then, you know, I want to know, I guess this, more like this, River. This is a conversation for us to pose to them in this scenario. Is like, I don't have a direct explanation for why I use it. And I also am not going to say that I'm right in doing it or I'm wrong in doing it, that I have a right or anything like that. I'm not in the boat of like, oh, just because I'm a minority, I should be able to say it too. Like, I'm definitely not that kind of person. But I'm still not someone who actively monitors trying to stop using it. And I'll be honest about it. I just don't. And I guess I don't have an argument for why that's right. And I don't know what to say about it. I don't have the answer for it. But Riv, I'm wondering if you have some insight on it. It's like, not as much why do we say it, but like, do you have a justification or an answer?
As to why I say it just in general?
Yeah, like why we say it, because it's not just me. Like, it's our friend group. Like, we do say it. I'm not even gonna question it. Like, it's just something that happens.
Regular ass brown boys.
Maybe because it's just so taboo to say, right?
That is one thing.
Sounds funny,
As many people know, me and River and a lot of our friend group are err on the side of taboo about a lot of things. And Audny and Carliene, I don't mean to say this in almost like a argumentative stance, but it's more of just like the same way that you don't have answers to certain things. I honestly do not have an answer to this, and I can't. It's a conversation I want to talk about because
Isn't the answer? I'm gonna cut you off. Isn't the answer that y'all been desensitized to it?
That is, yes, I agree. That is the answer, actually.
Much.
And but I think I counterpoint that with this, is that when I look within my friend group, I can't speak for every other Indian and I can't speak for every other minority, but I do say this: in our friend group, we are desensitized to mostly everything. Like, it is not just racism; it has to do with equality, with rights, a lot of things. We're just desensitized to them in general. Now, do I think that it would have a negative effect if we put it on our platforms? Yes. And I think that's why me and River actively don't put it on our platforms. I don't think there's a place for me to do those things on a platform. But remove from the platform, I just think that it's almost a hard conversation to have because I don't have an answer. Riv, anything to add on though? Like, it is just a desensitization, I think.
Carliene, speak on this.
Okay, so the fact that you already that using it on a platform could have some type of detrimental effect already shows that you may be desensitized to the use of the word because it's used around you all the time, but you know that it's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that you know that it's wrong and continue to do it is what makes it wrong. It's not like you said, like, you do it and maybe you don't have a reason why, because a lot of people like to say because they hear it in rap music,
Like, I wouldn't even go that far. Like, I don't even
as an excuse. So then, okay, so where do you think you were first exposed to the word that now it's become part of your everyday vocabulary?
See, okay, that's interesting, because the funny thing is my exposure personally was through the Black friends that I had. In the sense that, and not even this, again, not a justification at all, because I don't have a justification, but in the sense that, growing up, Black friends I had said it, obviously. And at the beginning, I was not one to say it. But after a while, I became affirmed to sing. And there's whole thing about, the N-word, the black card, and all that stuff, right? But even removing all that superficialness, it just became part of the vocabulary that they were using in conversation. And then when I started using it, there was nobody that said, like, nah, don't do it. And so and I'm talking, this is like elementary school, early days, right? So now I've continued, and now I'm at a point where I've been using it for forever. So with no repercussions from anybody. Like, Audney was the single person to tell me that I shouldn't be doing this. I'm serious.
Because your friends are fucking coons. Everybody, I'll say it right now. Y'all are some coon-ass motherfuckers. I hope Dr. Umar finds your asses. I hope that you burn in hell for everybody, for all your coon-ass girlfriend. Oops.
But you do understand who you're calling out there, right? Which is like a lot of Black people.
They're my brothers at the end of the day.
Right? Like, a lot of Black people. Brothers. So that's what I guess that's another thing. Like, how do you feel about, like, Black people's tolerance to allow minorities to use it? Because that's definitely a scenario that does happen quite a bit.
I'm gonna speak on that. Like, firstly, it's I'm gonna say first why I'm very uncomfortable and I'm very passionate towards why I don't like it
Mm-hmm.
being said by a non-Black person,
Yeah, totally.
including people of color. A story I've told a lot of times. I live in a white town. I grew up in an all white school. One day in the seventh grade, when I was going to the town of Erin with a group of friends, all white kids, we were walking, and a white kid asked us for a group of white people from the high school asked us for money.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, everybody knows me. I'm not one to disrespect. Don't ask me for anything.
Yeah.
I said, no, get your own money. And then they're like, oh, why are you doing that? She's so sassy, she's so this. And then my friends were laughing. They threw the dollar as the white group of high schoolers walked past. They're like, you fucking nigger.
Mm.
And like I will always tell that story because it it hurt me so much that none of my white kids said anything. I asked the girl, I said, yo, should I report this to the principal? She said, no, I want to be popular in high school. My sister knows those kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is the main, that is, I've never been so dehumanized in my
Yeah.
life. When that word, and past that, like, Carly and I have been called the N-word walking down the street in Guelph by some next crackhead. So why I don't like non-Black people saying it, why I feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's offensive, even if it's nigger, um, it's, you guys are so comfortable. I feel like Black people are so comfortable when they know, oh, this guy's not racist. I don't want to start a fight. I don't want to go through the whole race thing again. Like, just say it. Like, I don't really care that much. I know you're not calling me a nigger,
Uh-huh.
but it's sad that they are scared to speak up on it, or else they're gonna lose a friend, or else, like,
Mm.
oh, you're not a bad person, but you just say the N-word.
Agreed.
Like, if you say it and like I call you out and you don't want to be my friend, don't be my friend.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, I said what I said.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely.
You
Riff,
know, and I
I
really
wanna
find it
oh sorry.
funny because like if it was any other group, if it was any other minority group and there was some type of offensive term towards them and we were like, don't say it, all of a sudden everyone will shy away from saying it. It's
Mm.
just that this one word that everyone just seems to have some sort of fascination with.
Yeah.
And I think it does a little bit come from, like, it is in our everyday media, but only because we have reclaimed the word
Mm.
and we are trying to put a positive connotation to the word, and it becomes negative when the people who it was not created to oppress use it towards the people it was created to oppress.
I
that
see.
that is that is the disrespect.
Uh-huh. Totally.
And the disrespect also comes that, like, a lot of people fight to say it. Like, a lot of, I remember I used to work at Walmart, and this Egyptian boy, he was like, yo, I'm from North Africa. From North Africa, I should be able to say it, like. And I don't know why. I was just like, okay, like, I honestly, I didn't even fight it
Yeah.
because, but at the end of the day, you're gonna fight me over a dog. You're gonna fight me over some white woman choking a dog and trying to like, it's
No,
just,
totally.
y'all fight to say the N-word, but then when there's an issue, like when your Black friend is facing racism, or in the media there's police brutality, or there's this or there's that, whatever, all the issues that comes with being Black, you don't want that. You just want to reap the benefits of it. You just want to reap our culture and
Mm.
and and and
I
and
see.
capitalize off of it, and it's so hurtful.
Yo, wait. What if somebody was like one eighth black?
Do you identify
Would
as
that?
Black?
No,
Are you passing Black? You have
no.
privilege.
Right.
If you're 1/8 Black,
Hmm.
like, that don't do shit, because at the end of the day, um why you're not passing Black. You are a white passing person. If you're 0.675 African.
Mhm.
Like, why do you have to point that out just to say a word? You shouldn't have to. You shouldn't want to say it that bad. I
So
don't say a lot of words.
I just want to give it your argument in summation for the people listening, because this is actually a very insightful thing. What you're essentially saying is that, you know, people are willing to use the pros of Black culture and Black community without addressing the cons of it. Is that, am I not overgeneralizing the point there? I just want to make it clear as to what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't have any commentary on it. It's really just me.
Because he knows I'll cuss his ass out.
No, I don't. No, I don't have a. I don't disagree. You know, and I agree with you. But at the end of the day, I don't think I'm going to stop saying it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's as frustrating as that is. It's just how I am, and I don't. I
I don't like
refrain.
that statement.
No, I understand.
I know.
I don't say that.
I understand that you're for the culture. Like, I understand that it is a part of that you again have been desensitized to it, and that it's a thing. Like, it's a part of your vocab. But that is again hurtful. Like,
I agree.
You can't take that out of your vocabulary.
No, that's not what I'm saying. My thing is that, you know, again, I bring back to the point of the way who I am and how I speak, in the sense that this isn't an excuse, by the way. This isn't an excuse more than it's just an explanation from my perspective, my position. In the sense that it's not about actively thinking about taking out of vocabulary as much as that it's almost laziness on my part, where I'm not as concerned. And that's tough to say, honestly. It's not a great light for me to be in, but it's honesty. And that's just how I am. And it doesn't provide, I guess it doesn't give you an adequate answer, but what I'm trying to say is, yes, I could work to take it out of my vocabulary. Yes, I could do that. And I did do that in a platform sense, in a public sense, but
because if you said it in a platform, there will be repercussions to your actions, but there's no repercussions to your actions when you say it every day. And that's a lot of the Asian community, y'all say it, and y'all, like, there's all, I understand that you're not trying to justify it, but at the end of the day, that's a justification for why you say it.
again,
And I know that's let me finish my point. I'm sorry that I cut you off. I do apologize, but at the end of the day, if you, with the platform that you have, being Judas Sai, the 9 God, with River being who he is, not following me back, it's okay. But do you guys understand the impact that you have, not only on your community itself, but ignorant little white people? Like, they look up to you. And the Asian community has not been an ally for the Black community, in the sense that, you can be for the culture, you can understand it, but those little things, like not saying nigga, it's a lot more powerful than just understanding,
Agreed. And the conversation I like to have then is again, it's touching back on what I mentioned before, in the sense that the Asian community, my community, River can attest to his own community, is that we are now, as a minority, an internal minority that rarely gets involved in affairs outside of us. And this is not a justification. This is not an argument even. It's just that that's the way it is. And that's the reality of the situation, is that Indian people look out for Indian people. East Asian people, even it gets to the point, River, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like, Vietnamese people look out for Vietnamese people. Chinese people look out for Chinese people. It's just how we are. And that is our response to the oppression that we faced.
Okay, so you would just turn a blind eye to somebody else who was, let's say, in the same position that you were, and you're no longer in that position, and somebody else is now placed in that same position. You would not help them.
No, that's not what I'm
get out
saying.
of the position that you were once able to overcome.
Okay, so this is what I say to that. It's not what I'm saying personally. It is what I'm saying. 9 times, not 9 times, but a majority of Indians would go with, yes, they wouldn't. They turn a blind eye. I assure that to you. A majority of Indians would, in fact, turn a blind eye to those
And
issues.
do you think that is the correct way of thinking?
No,
Do you think
I
that's the way?
don't. I don't agree with that way of thinking. I may not on my platforms be overtly Black Power or be against
You
that
don't
stuff. I
need to
don't.
be.
But my, and again, this goes to the thing that I was talking about, where I find that the methodology that the Black community has gone on is wrong. I explained that point already, so I won't go do it again. What I try to do on my platforms and what I've continuously tried to do is simply give people the understanding that everyone is empowered to do things, regardless of their scenarios or surroundings. And that is my continuous message. And I attempt to apply that to everybody. So it's not I'm not trying to ignore the issues. I am trying to give it in the method that I feel is more effective. And that is in just empowering anybody to be able to do what they want to do. I continuously, in the business I've run, in the music I've made, just made sure it was clear that I'm not the only one who's able to do this. Anybody can do this, and anybody's able to do this. And that's where I stand. And I don't think I'll ever step into that light, because for the simple reason that I see the perspective of it all. And to me, it just doesn't seem like an effective route. I find it much more effective to be an empowering person for yourself, internally empowering people, rather than just being like, yes, we need to promote Black stuff. We need to do this. I'm more in the sense that you as a person can do all these things. And I'm trying to show people that whole scenario. That's where I stand with this. And that's me personally. And that differs very much from the Indian community.
Yeah, and I understand your points. I would say I've listened to you, a lot with those things. Like I was so hesitant starting my podcast looking in. I was like, oh, I need my camera, I need my grant, I need all of this. But I was just like, you know what? I have my mic, I have my laptop, etc. I started it. I really respect that way of thinking. But again, when it comes to the what you said, that the methodology that the Black community have taken is very wrong. You are correct to an extent, because we did, now that I'm just thinking about it, if we look at the Black Panther movement, we were there was the lunch programs and the legal programs and all these types of, like, the Black Panther movement was amazing. And it did take after things, stuff from the Asian community, like that community sense, that helping those businesses and supporting your own. And we used our rights and the Constitution, and we did that. But then it was targeted by the FBI, and the leader was killed, and the media turned the narrative and said that this is a terrorist group. So Black people turning into a union is a threat to North America.
I see.
It's terrorism.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to get to this point exactly before we get off on a tangent. My point exactly expresses that, in the sense that there is bound to be oppression in the level of it is differing, but there is bound to be oppression for every single person who attempts to think differently and act differently than the regular norm. There is bound to be outside oppression. What I try to advocate for, and what I've always advocated for, is the idea that the power gets taken away from the oppressor when you continue to do the things that you believe are truest without notion and effect from those oppressors. So in the same sense, I give it to the Black Panther explanation. They did that, and it was amazing to see. The saddest part about it was that after it was a media blizzard, after everyone decided that this was a terrorist thing, nobody continued. Nobody went on and continued to do that. Rather, the methodology was to then go to the aggressive standpoint of we need to fight back, rather than continuing the community thing in the same. And I don't mean it in the sense it was gone entirely. I mean in the sense to the same effect and the same focus. The focus has shifted, and I respected and admired and appreciated the focus of Mandela and MLK and the Black Panther movement. I very much appreciate what they've done, and they did. But the saddening part to me is that didn't continue to be the focus, and rather the focus had changed to a different methodology, and the methodology that I am completely against now. And that's the only knock I have against the Black movement. The only knock I have is the methodology in which they do it. I empathize with the struggles. I understand the oppressive state. I get that society's fucked against their, without their favor. And I am all for Black empowerment. But I am fundamentally disagreed with the methodology that has been taken, because you did try to do it. The Black community had a chance. It was amazing. The stuff that they were able to do for themselves and internally. And I see it in glimpses. You know, we talk about Jay, you mentioned Killer Mike and all these people. I see the glimpses and it's amazing. I just wish that was more of that was an entire focus of the community as a whole, rather than a few key members. And that's where I fundamentally disagree with it. Other than that, I'm all for everything that the Black community has to say. And I truly believe that we live in a better world if they were to empower and racism was to minimize, even end. But I do think that the methodology is fundamentally flawed.
All right.
As a whole.
I see what you mean, but look at Martin Luther King Jr. He tried it one way. He was assassinated. Mandela spent how many years of his life in jail for basic human rights, So at this point in time, from what I'm taking, is that we need to sacrifice years of our lives to fight for basic human rights. That is what we need to do. We need to sacrifice ourselves.
But the choice isn't how you sacrifice. That's what I'm trying to say. It's how you sacrifice. Sacrifice is inevitable. It's just inevitable. It's a reality. But it's how you sacrifice. Do you spend your time sacrificing building, or do you spend your time sacrificing and fighting? That's the difference. I don't think they coincide. I don't think they entangle. I think there's a very different focus you have to have.
I think we need to fight in order to build. I think that
I disagree.
Fight to even get a place to lay foundation. I don't think we even have a construction site, if we're going to use an analogy. I don't think we have ground that is even in our name, property that belongs to us, where we can even begin to even plan to build something up. I think that we need to fight in order just to have something as basic as our lives, something as precious as our lives, something that you cannot take back. These buildings, something like Target, they can rebuild that. They can truly rebuild that. Can we rebuild George Floyd? Can we resurrect him? Can we bring him back to life?
No, but but I'd rather look at it as a sacrifice in the movement. If we look back on this, and again, this is an opposing point. This is not a good one. I'm honest. It's not something that's favorable. But what I'm saying here is that when you talk about foundation, construction points, and laying something out, Black leaders who made way in government, I've seen it in many scenarios. I can't name them off the top of my head. I wish I could, because it would make my argument stronger. But there have been plans for not gentrification, because gentrification is wrong, but building within low-income communities to bring that community together. Those have happened. They have been planned. They have been stopped before execution. But the problem is, after a while, they continued to propose, denied, and then they just stopped proposing. And then they just said, no, it's not going to work, so let's just stop. And I just don't like that methodology. I just don't agree with it, in the sense that if you get stopped 100 times, but you make it 101, those sacrificed 100 times, in my opinion, far outweighs 100 riots for the 101st one to work.
But those 100 riots, like, if we're going to look at another perspective, we wouldn't be having this conversation if those riots didn't happen. And that is us fighting to build. Because right now we are building. Right now I'm able to use your podcast to build up myself.
No,
Say,
totally.
follow me. Go follow me, because Carly and I are doing something really amazing. And we've been doing this in our initiatives.
Agree, but why did you need a riot to talk about it? Why couldn't we just talk about it?
That's a question you ask yourself. Why did we need to riot to talk about it?
No, but that's what I'm saying. I do talk about it, but not in the sense of it's just Black. I talk about a much general sense that everybody should feel empowered to do as they wish. That's my whole thing.
But why did we need to riot for you to talk about Black issues?
You didn't need a riot to talk about Black issues.
No, but the thing is,
we're here because
we're here right now. I'm gonna cut you off. We're here right now because of George Floyd, because of the riots, because it's huge media, and I don't know how you're gonna rebut. We're here today because of the fight.
Agreed, but this podcast happens. Your podcast continues. What happens a month later when the oppressive media forgets? Do you need another riot to continue to propel your conversation? I just don't think you do.
No, but that riot will, again, build some awareness to what Carly and I are doing, to who I am, to what we stand for. Maybe one person will come, oh, watch my podcast, follow me on Instagram, see what I'm doing, maybe support some of the businesses the Black businesses that I continuously post, Bold Lemonade, Soft Lashes, Adeva Beauty, all these amazing Black people in the GTA who are doing amazing things that I've been supporting. But guess what? I don't have that follower. So then a riot happens. We get on here, we get on a podcast that might get 1,000 views, maybe around 2 of those people, 3, maybe 20 people will come on my page and be like, oh, yo, who's this chick? Okay, then I'm capitalizing off of this. And that's because the fight. And that's because we wouldn't get here if it wasn't the fight.
Is fighting the only way? Is the way?
All right.
Is that the only way you can see to make this happen? Is it?
It's the only way that it's. Carliene, speak.
Tell me that's not regular behavior, though. You know, I saw something on Twitter, but it's like, when 9/11 happened, did the Americans need to go back and bomb all those countries to get back? Like, did that undo 9/11?
No, I totally agree.
To violence with violence, you know?
I totally agree. It's human nature. It makes sense. I am fundamentally against it because of my perspective. I am not saying that it's never should happen. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. It's a response. It's justified. I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to say is, there has to be another way to do these things. And maybe that's my optimistic brain thinking. Maybe that's just me being naive. But the way I see it is, there should be another way to do this. I get that this is in certain senses effective. It happened. We can acknowledge that and use that. It makes sense that you're using that. I'm glad that you're using it to do something productive. But what I'm trying to say is, can we get away from rioting and creating violence and rather use, the power of information, the power of social media, the power of the world we live in to work within the system? Although it may even seem like there's no hope. I think it starts with, rather than fighting, instilling hope that maybe there's a change. And again, it goes to the same perspective as the legislations, is that you may have to, one riot may do what 100 pieces of legislation that were denied didn't. But doesn't it save lives? Doesn't it do things that, isn't it just a better way to do things?
But didn't you say that we need to sacrifice lives?
I said you need to sacrifice lives in a productive manner, in the sense that sacrificing your life to a goal of getting one piece of legislation passed or getting through to having a position in politics, that's a sacrifice of a life that I can condone. I'm not talking about, like, I don't condone sacrificing physical life for it. It's a reality we live in. It's happened. And so I'm glad that because it's occurred, we're using it in a productive manner. But if we could shift it from the beginning to instill hope that rather than risking your life fighting, risk your life building. And maybe it doesn't happen as soon. Maybe it's not as effective. Maybe it doesn't create the same attention. But it just seems like not only a safer way to do it, but almost a more productive way to do it. Because what it would start to eliminate over generations is that stigma of aggression. If we could just instill hope and then start working towards building, the change would not be as quick. I understand that. It would not be nearly as quick. And for your foreseeable future, you may not see anything. But if you're able to do that generationally, and this is an idealistic perspective, I understand that. The reality is very different. But my argument is simply that if we were able to instill hope, isn't that just a better way to do it? Like, is the fighting necessary if we could instill hope? And I get the hardest part of it all is to instill hope.
Yeah, it really comes with I love your optimism. I do. It's great methodology. But the fighting will never stop. Black Wall Street was burned down. Okay. We had an economic system. It was burnt down. We were doing the kumbaya bullshit. They assassinated how many of our leaders? They try to put Angela Davis in jail. They killed Huey, the leader of the Black. Like I'm naming these things because your logic sounds beautiful. It does, and I love it, and it drives me to want to build, to want to start my businesses. It really inspires me, and I hope it inspires another Black girl or another Black boy to get out there. I do. But as a community as a whole, I don't think anybody has privilege to say that the methodology is stupid, because we are labeled as a terrorist group. We are 3/5 of a man to the white man. We are nothing in their eyes. So it's like, you're gonna kill us on camera. You're gonna step on our necks you're gonna kneel on our necks when we kneeled in peace.
I agree. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No, I see your point, and that's why I don't see any resolution to this debate. I just wanted to have a conversation to not only build my perspective, because my goal is always to build my own perspective, and that's why I like this conversation. Now, because we've probably gone over a regular average runtime and gone over any part,
a two-part of this, because people need to listen.
Totally, we might have to split this into 2 parts, but regardless, this was amazing, and I think we talked about a lot that was very important. And for anyone that's made it this far, I want to congratulate you and thank you for taking your time, because I understand that this is very different. Our last episode was on drugs. We talked about everything nonsense. The episode before that, we played a fucked up version of Would You Rather. This is not a regular.
Y'all asked the poor Roshi if he would fuck his mom or like, I watched the entire thing.
Yeah. No, that's.
Thank you.
Listen, me and River live in a world where we like to act ignorantly because it's entertaining and it's fun. But we thank you for taking the time to listen to something actually serious that is off brand from what we do, but we felt that was something necessary that we needed to do. This was not a move, and I also want to make this clear to the people who've made it here, because the people who never made it here are going to make their own judgments, and I could care less. But the people who have made it here, I want to make it clear, me and River didn't do this in an effort to use this for clout or for plays or anything. The sole reason for having this conversation was because I felt and River felt strongly that it would be an interesting and genuine conversation to have. And it just happens that the timing aligns this way, and the events that have occurred have created a scenario where this is something favorable for us to do. And I just want to make that clear. And I hope, Audney and Carliene, you agree with me in this sense that this is not something we just did to vulture on, and it's more of something we did because we genuinely wanted to have a conversation.
And yeah, I'm grateful that, a different audience will be able to hear our perspective, definitely, hopefully learn something from things that have been said. So thank you.
No worries.
Yes, and I'm gonna capitalize off of this.
Go for it. Give your link.
Podcast. It's called Looking In, and we look into a perspective of a Black girl who grew up in the suburbs. We were able to look into a perspective from people from all different nationalities. We got the brown boy, we got little Asian boy, we got the African pride, and my Jamaican self. So this is all different sorts of perspectives, and I thank you for even listening to this. Follow me at Audny Cachet, AUDNYCAS. I can't even speak English, but it will be linked.
Yeah, we'll link everything.
Follow Carliene. We're smart.
CDOT certified on the ground.
Audney, Carliene, we'll provide their links to their podcast, the Black Student Association at GCVI, and their personal profiles. Please go check them out. And even if you don't agree with what they're saying, at least take a second to listen to what they're saying.
Suck on a mother.
Oh my goodness.
Just suck on a mother, not for real. Yeah, man. Okay, so this is episode, what are we on, Riv? Episode 4 now?
4, yeah.
Yeah, this was episode 4 of Genuine Talks. Thanks for listening. And we out.
You're
Easy.
welcome, bro.
Thank you. Yeah.
All I've been doing is listening, family.
No, before we leave, though, thank you to the guests, really. Thank you guys for coming on. This was short notice. We planned this really well, and you guys were very amicable to our timeline. So thank you.
No problem.
But yeah, Genuine Talks. We out. I'm done talking. Easy.